Sir, the gentleman yields, and I now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, this hearing has already been extraordinarily significant because the U.S. Border Patrol chief testified to Congress that the administration's policy of releasing illegals in the United States as opposed to detaining them and removing them is the cause and the driver of the crisis at the border, which he characterized as being out of control and not subject to operational control of the United States government. So that's a big deal. And now I'm curious, in this stage, Colonel McCraw, you said something that sort of got me back on something that sort of is something I've focused on a lot or thought about a lot. And I don't know what your answers are going to be. They may be adverse to me politically, but that'd be fine. Because I think about, you know, we all focus on the circumstances as they are, and they're very bad, and all the bad effects that we're seeing in terms of members of the Border Patrol, Mr. Cabrera and their families, and Sheriff, what you're seeing in chases in your community, Colonel, what you're trying to do in terms of the investment your state has to make to get this under control. But here's what I wonder about is where could we go? If this continues as it is for another 2 years, we're only halfway into this through this administration. They're devoted to this policy that's so destructive. So where could we end up later on? And I'm always, my mind always goes back. The phrase that you used, Colonel, you were talking about the cartels, the transnational criminal organizations, and you mentioned command and control. I heard earlier that 35,000 flights that Congresswoman Dela Cruz pointed out of drone flights. They're coming across. I made some people sort of smile, not unknowingly, when I asked them hearing a year or so ago, why we don't shoot them down? And they also like, you can't do that. So we're having, you know, they're bringing drugs and people over with the use of far better equipment than Border Patrol has available. I always get the name of the town wrong. I think it's Culiacan. In January, had not the first, but the latest war between the Mexican military and the Sinaloa cartel over the arrest of Ovidio Guzman, son of El Chapo. And I would love to show you these pictures. I don't have them, but the Los Angeles Times has some great pictures that show flaming tractor trailers and smashed cars and one or two of the narco tanks with these improvised rigs on them that cartel fighters taking on the Army, firing 50 caliber weapons at aircraft in the air. And the thing, and I understand it's a whole different deal in the United States, but if you have, I'm told, Mr. Cabrera, that Border Patrol always tells me that nothing comes across the border unless the cartel permits it. And I understand, is that basically true, sir?
Yes, sir, that's true.
And I hear that $15 billion of income comes to the cartel just from the fees for people to come across. And a lot of them owe those fees. We're hearing about those stories. And I heard HSI, or I forget what it is, which agency, but is seeing a surge in violence relating to collecting those fees. So you have hundreds of thousands or millions of people coming in. Obviously, most of them perfectly fine people, and they want to abide by the law, but they're all under the thumb of a cartel that's growing across the border. And you talked about the command and control, the capabilities they have, Colonel. What's to prevent them from developing in the United States the circumstance that you saw in Culiacan, where they could go to war against American law enforcement and military forces?
Well, first of all, the Mexican cartels are already inside the United States. They have command and control elements in here involved to support their operations, drug and human trafficking. They work with the gangs that we talked about before. Where you see most of the violence, manifest itself as relates to the cartels is with gangs and through gangs. If you talk to local law enforcement, anybody will tell you, even in the fentanyl market, it doesn't matter what market it is, it's the gangs and their collaboration with each other and with the cartels are the biggest problem right now. The Mexican cartels own Mexico. It's the bottom line, through intimidation, hyper-violence, coercion, and frankly, corruption.
If our policy continues to profit them and build the people they can abuse and manipulate for their own purposes, couldn't they strengthen in the United States to the point that they're that kind of a hazard?
Well, a seemingly compassionate policy of allowing everybody in the world to come to the United States is anything but. Because you turn them over, as you noted, to the Mexican cartels. And there's too many rapes, there's too many violent crimes that are committed upon those women and children that are moved into this country. And the extortion continues, not just in terms when they get to the river, they got the money, they'll continue it on in stash houses. In some cases, Chinese in particular, we've come across in terms of where they're indentured servitude. They don't have $50,000, $70,000 to pay to get here. They owe a criminal organization that money, okay, to be able to work off their debt. And whether it's the sex trafficking industry, we've seen when young girls and women have been attracted from and recruited from Central America and from Central Mexico on the promise of a domestic servant. I mean, these are brutal, depraved, cowardly criminals that can care less. And certainly they impact. In our profession, it's the absence of crime and disorder that defines success. And right now, there's anything but the absence of crime and disorders relates to the border, and it impacts every community in the nation.
At risk the chairman will gavel me down, I'd like Mr. Cabrera to answer that question too. Do you see any risk of the kind of specter that I described in the United States?
As far as that happening, I mean, we have had issues here in the Rio Grande Valley. I know that there's cartel members living among us in our area, not just in our area and probably everyone's area that are just flying under the radar. There's always a possibility, whether it's on a small scale. I can't see the larger scale taking off just for the fact that our law enforcement is not corrupt like it is on the Mexican side, but there will be violence on it. Yeah.
Thank God for y'all. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Thank you.